Okay, good morning everybody. This first presentation this morning is from Chris Paul, aka Ziggi, from the Childcare Company, who's been working the past 12 months?
A bit more.
A little bit more than the past 12 months on some work with Dyalog APL and ASP.NET, generating some unique, I think, looking websites. So I'll hand over to Chris now and he can tell you all about it.
Well, yeah, good morning everyone. I apologise for my state. I might lose my voice halfway through this. I've been suffering from some kind of nasty bug. But I will struggle on anyway. Now, last year I talked about why we decided to do this in APL, and it was really about speed. And this time around, Morton told me it's got to be more technical, look at the more technical aspects of it and the techniques behind, which quite frankly are very simple, very noddy. So I feel a little pretender to the throne here. I'm going to show you something that's really quite so simple. But I suppose the point is that you can get some very flashy websites using some very, very simple, easy techniques. So, who are the Childcare Company? Well, I asked the marketing guys, and they gave me that. And I read it, and I thought, wow, we're fantastic. But I don't imagine anyone here is about to change career and want to become work in a nursery or a kindergarten over here. But basically what we do is we provide online training for nursery or kindergarten staff in settings to get them up to a qualification for which the British government wanted to have. If anybody is interested in changing career, talk to me afterwards or go to our website, which is obviously www.thechildcarecompany.com. We did, however, win an award after training for about 6 months and having the package out there in the market for 5, I think it was. We won the Nursery Management Today Innovator Supplier of the Year last year, something we're very proud of. So, last time I didn't know how to pitch this, and I think I might have come in too high for some people and too low. So I'm going to start very low. So if anybody has actually been going through the whole conference thinking themselves, what on earth is the .NET framework, but too scared to ask, you've come to the right place. What is the .NET framework? Well, Wikipedia says that, which again is obviously something put together by marketing people. I view it in more simple terms. It is basically a mechanism for having lots of languages talking to each other, integrating. So systems can be provided where you've got lots of bits that are doing what they do best, what ASP does best, what Dyalog does best, what SQL Server does best. They can all be brought together in a sort of soup, and these languages can communicate and transfer data between the two. What is ASP.NET? Active server pages. I had to look that up, I confess. And again, that's what Microsoft will tell you. What is it really? Well, it's a mechanism for generating web pages. So at the end on the client side, when you log on your PC, that is just basically translating HTML. That HTML is generated by the server using the the ASP.NET to generate pages. Most of you most likely already knew that. And it's easy to set up. Somebody asked me last time around how to get this thing set up, and it is quite straightforward. If you want to do this independently, you could just rent some web space or virtual private server somewhere, set up Dyalog on it, set up your IIS, get a copy of Visual Studio, Microsoft Visual Studio, or better still, Microsoft Web Developer Express, which is pretty free. As I say, I got mine just with a manual. I believe you can download it. I haven't tried to see if you download it and then it tries to charge you in a month's time or something. It might do. But because we're mainly dealing with Dyalog, all the full features of the Microsoft Visual Studio don't really apply. You're paying a lot of money for stuff that is designed to work with C# or Visual Basic and not necessarily Dyalog. So I just use the cheapy version. So to set it up, that's roughly what an ASP.NET page looks like. You'll spot at the top, I've left the language set to Visual Basic. That's just to make web developer work better. If it thinks it's using Visual Basic, it seems to perform a lot better than if I tell it Dyalog. Because then if I flip between the two, it doesn't work as well. And for some reason, it just works. You set your Dyalog workspace, and inside your Dyalog workspace, you name your class. And that is what is brought in when the page is executed. So, why use Web Developer? Here it is. It's because you can drag any of these kind of objects in onto your page. You can position them, move them around, get your page looking how you want it to look. And that technique is obviously very good for setting it up. Ouch. Also, if you select, I'll just drag a list box into here, I'm not going to save this, just a list box into there. You see these properties down here. Now all of these properties can be set from inside APL directly. Sometimes you don't know what the names are and you can look it up, but quite quickly you can find it from here. If I set a property for that, for example, skin ID, invisible. Actually, let's set that to false. And if I have a look back in my source code, I see I've created a list box and I have a very visible set to false. So I know that in Dyalog I can set that directly. Let's nip back to the presentation. The class in Dyalog is set up like this. There's information at the top, which is all the bits of ASP or the .NET framework that you need. That's my standard set. I tend to use that everywhere. Sorry guys, I'm getting a bit dizzy. You have to set access to be public. Then you'd have your APL functions and close off thing at the end. APL functions generally look like that. The key thing is page underbar load. That is executed. When you open up the web page, page underbar load is executed. Every time you refresh it, page underbar load is executed. So that is how you start running and populating your page with objects from inside APL. I have a little check settings at the top as well. That's mainly to check that the person has logged on to the system properly, they have the right permission, and they're not going to a page where they can do nasty things. And then buttons. We've got a button there, or code for a particular button. So if we have a look back at this, I have a button here called BT Next. It has a property OnClick. So the screen's a little smaller than I. OnClick there is the function name. So that informs it that when you click that button, you execute the function click next. What it looks like in the real world is that. Now I just threw this together for this example. There it is at the top there, and obviously I'm using a local version of a server. So my PC is acting here both as server and client. So normally that would be www.something and then the ASP function. So if I click that, it executes, let's keep the top information, it executes that function. And what that function does is basically call another page up, call another ASP file. In this example, the ASP file has two parameters that can be handed in, John and the lesson number. So you see that at the top, I know it's slightly faded, that it has gone to the web page with John and the lesson number. On that page, in page load, I can then pull out that parameter information and use it to write into the text. So if you saw on that page, sorry if this is a bit noddy, I feel. See, it's actually written the information, the parameters that have been passed in. If I change that at the top to be 56, obviously it just changes the lesson information. So the APL function is pulling in the attributes, the parameters, and then writing it into the screen. And of course that information can come from anything. It can come from a component file, it can come from all sorts of things. If we branch on from here, this is the third example I just knocked up, and you see this nice and bold there. And I can change that, I can switch the bold off, switch the italic on or switch the italic off. Now that works. Now I'm going to have to go to the APL workspace here to show you this class. Right, so what I've done here is first time through page load, I've populated that drop-down box with select bold on, bold off, italic on, italic off. You see that I've got a condition statement, 0 equals, I pass back. That is 0 the first time it goes through the function. If it refreshes or you click a button or do something else, it will drop through page load again, but you don't want to keep adding to your drop-down list, otherwise it starts going off the bottom of the page and gets a bit silly. Next time you come through, if you click any of those or select any of those things from your drop-down list, I've got some very ifs. I know we APLers want to do something in one line or something a little snazzy, but I thought just for the sake of quickly showing how you can pick up that information and then use it. And so that text box, as I said, the parameters of it can all be set. So I can set the bold to be 1 or 0, on or off. I can set italic. I can make it bigger. I can change the character size. I can change the color. I can do anything I like to it. Now, spinning icon. So if we move on to the system itself, I was looking at the wrong screen. This is our system, Childcare system. If I log on to test user, that is generating ASP. So it's big and bold because that's what they wanted. In fact, my instruction was design me a computer system that doesn't look like a computer system. Which is challenging, but there we go. So this works. That page is generated from ASP.NET. Information is pulled in. It knows the test user is called Jane, so welcome Jane. That information is pulled out of a file. It knows that her assessor is Gemma Eaton. And then these are the buttons that the assessor can use. We have a system whereby if an icon is spinning, it means there's something new. So this means that there's a new news item. Everyone is so impressed by this because it looks flashy. But quite frankly, all it is if there's news not read, rather than display that image, display this motion GIF. Very simple, very effective, but the presentation works well. If in this case I go into the news, I can see that one news item at the top there is spinning. If I have a look at that news item, it Can't find it. Duh. No idea why. If I go back home again, my news icon has stopped spinning because it thinks the person has actually seen the piece of news. Why is that new? Oh, it doesn't matter. Right. So, the learner has come into the system and they can compose email, they can read their email, they can see the news, they can look at the handbooks, which are general information that they need, they can see their work plans, but the main thing they tend to do is go into my portfolio. And that tells them all the work that, all the standards that they need to meet. These things expand out, and it tells them how far through the course they are. If I click on one of these, it opens it up and it tells them how far through that particular unit are. Now that little device there with the bar that goes across, again, flashing. That's a small flash program which we got commissioned. Yeah, I'll explain this. So you've got some things that are executed locally and some things that are executed on the server. Locally, obviously, you have HTML, you have Flash and JavaScript. So Flash and JavaScript will need to be loaded on the PC. But the data is populated from the server. Of course, there can be many clients all accessing the website. When this thing starts up, the APL workspace exists, and you can have global variables sitting in that workspace. And you can have what's called session variables, which relate to each individual client. And what I tend to do is I've got information about who's logged onto the system, sitting in global variables on the server. And I've got information about who they are in their session variables around the outside. So you've got to be careful, because if somebody has logged onto the system and the system then knows that, say, test user is logged on, you don't want somebody else coming along and then stealing that session from somewhere else. So by comparing the session variables with the global variables, I can make sure that the person who is accessing the information is in fact the person that logged on and is still sitting on the same IP address. Okay? But I also use session variables. Oh yeah, sorry, session variables. That's how you slide stuff into a session variable. That's how you sign stuff out. When I did this presentation at last year, somebody pointed this and said, "You've just shown me a piece of APL code that I have no idea what it's doing." Well, the syntax of it is not down to me. Quite frankly, that's just how it works. If you write data into a session variable, read data out of a session variable. So in Dyalog, what I do is I work out the percentage that the user has done for the system. I set up the information in my Flash function, which is called progressbar.swf, which is a Flash function, and I pass in the parameter. I write that information into a session variable. Then, in ASP.NET file, I set up the Flash object, and I call the session variable inside these greater than percentage signs, which then executes. So that actually then forms into this the line that I have sent from APL, which is how you get that bar appearing, and that's when you get the nice sort of smooth, flashy, this is how far through the system you are. Come on, I'm supposed to go on to the next one. Now I said also that JavaScript executes locally. If I go through to a lesson, click on that, this information, as I click on each of these things, it's sending information back to the APL workspace, and the APL workspace is then saying, oh right, you need to see this information here. And it populates these two buttons up there and sets data, sets calling functions into them. If you click on this, the lesson, it actually opens up a new panel on the local PC. Now you have to do that using JavaScript, because obviously to open up a new Explorer session, that has to be done on the client and not remotely. But in Dyalog, I can tell it to execute a bit of JavaScript. Now, the BT button, or the lesson button, has an attribute OnClientClick. Now, before you saw OnClick, which is how you execute an APL function, OnClientClick is how you would execute something locally. So basically what this is saying is open up a new panel, you've got your underbar blank. I have no idea why Microsoft use underbar blank. It's never made any sense to me, but they do. And of course you can pass in the parameters. Right, so getting back to here, we now have this session. This is worked out from a template. On the system we have about, well, we'll find out in a minute, it's about 15 different templates, from which, I made a note of it, I had a look. Currently, 1,685 pages are generated. And it works by the template, this one being 0.8, has 8 points on the splat. And you can click on each of those buttons, like so. This is another template, template 1, and it has information that populates from afar, from a lesson file, including a little bit of video.
Hazards during arrival and departure of children. All members of staff have to be vigilant at times when people are coming and going from the...
So we've got lots of little bits of video that we've made ourselves, which run through this Flash program. Again, populated in the same way by using a session variable, throw the information in the session variable, it executes and it appears on this particular template. There's one of these, a tutorial for every single lesson in the system, each with different information. Oh, gosh. So, if I come out of here and leave that and come on to the Ziggi account, you see I have a different set of buttons. It knows automatically it's me, it knows I'm an administrator, and I have a lot more power and control over the world as a whole, including CMS, which is the content management system. Each item has a key. Let's not use that one. Oh, hang on. And this is the information that is used to generate that page, which can be done by anyone. It doesn't have to be done by any technical person. An administrator can do this. And that's why I was amazed when I had a look, because, you know, we all set up these things and then we sort of hand over a tool to somebody and then go away and then have a look 6 months later. We suddenly realise this file's got 1,600 records in. I never thought it was going to ever get anywhere near that big. I thought 400 would be tops. But I suppose once you let these things go, people start creating. As you see at the top there, it says a template. I was told originally that there would only ever be 8-point splats, but I didn't believe them. So I generated a structure which is 0 point and then the number of points on the splat. And as you can see, I was right. Suddenly they wanted different points on the splat. The information there can be changed, altered, whatever. The title is always item 0 for anybody who are index origin 0 fans. Excuse me. The text for each of the item If I show you this one here, so we go there, review, let's open a separate panel. You see the points of the splat there. If I go back to the training session and I say edit this, and I'm going to change that to be 88, update, save. We had a few problems, I had to put in a few extra. Definitely want to save this thing. Now if I go back, refresh that, immediately the text is changed to there. Likewise on this page here, it tells it if when you click on that button, what's the next page you go to in the system. So in that case, click on there, it immediately takes me to, you can see it's handing in the parameter at the top. It sends me to 302.1.1. When you click on it, it actually goes to an ASP page called Lesson Master. Lesson Master doesn't actually appear on the screen at all. What it does is it goes into the page load function. It looks to see, reads in from the file what kind of page it is. It then says, oh, well, you're a template 1, therefore I'm going to sort of immediately send you off to reload ASP template 1. It loads up template 1 then pulls in all the information, populates all the bits. Is this making very sense? Yeah. I've got information here, so I pressed F11 just because the screen is a little smaller than I'm used to, and I thought if I got rid of all that stuff at the top, we'd be able to see more clearly what's going on. So that's just F11 to make it full screen.
That good. Without that, you could just get rid of that.
There you go. Your wish is my command. Oh, you got to be careful because it confuses. Can confuse. I mean, I've shown various people how to do different things, but we're talking about people based in a nursery who, and some of them, not all of them, some are very bright, but some of them are not quite so, and we have to do a lot of hand-holding around IT, particularly when they're talking about Office files, because they'll say they've got Microsoft Office, and then after researching why they can't open a file, you suddenly realise they've got Microsoft Works and all this sort of thing. Just quickly move through those pages. So if I were to click on that, goes to the next page. This one, you do me F11. Come on, do your thing. No idea why it's not working. Don't care. You see these buttons down here? That takes you back to the splat. That takes you forward around the splat. That takes you back. Oh, sorry, that takes you back. That takes you forward. Now here is a chunk of HTML. And that I've used these special ones here. You've got this HTML editor built in the thing. That's actually written in Visual Basic. I bought that online. It's called Free Text Box. Do search. It costs about $100 sometimes. I think some $150 sometimes, depending on whether they've got a promotion on. So I downloaded that, plugged it in, and so I've got all the advantage of that thing and not having to develop it myself straight away. But that's what I'm talking about when I say that you can use the soup. Now, if somebody's already written a free text box and it happens to be in Visual Basic, well, still, I can download it, I can plug it into my system. It saves me time. $100 is nothing. Likewise with the video, oh, I don't want to do that, do I? I've remade all the little videos. We use this little flash program called V2F, again bought online, again around the $150 mark, and we can use it everywhere. Now of course you could just stick a YouTube link in there, but that would put all our content to the world on YouTube rather than behind secure passwords. So we wanted something a little bit more sophisticated without having to develop a full sort of forward, back, screenplay, pause, video player ourselves. Is that the same ones we've seen before?
It's essential that all practitioners show awareness of the need to protect children from harm.
So I can change that at any stage to be any other video that I happen to have generated. Let me find the right page, Chris. So anything that I happen to have created myself. Yes, everyone's a critic. I'm sorry, I was playing around yesterday. Any questions? Is that because you're all stunned by my little bit of video, or think I'd be listening to an idiot for an hour or half an hour? Sorry, yes?
What would be if you did all the same and just visuals? No idea, just visuals.
Well, Visual Studio needs, ASP.NET needs some kind of program behind it to generate, to execute the buttons and that sort of thing, unless you're completely using, so you would often use C# or Visual Basic.
No.
You just want to do everything in? Could you do it all? Well, I suppose it depends on the application. With this,
One is just a mouse that
yeah,
with some words.
yeah.
All the words can represent on the side as a tree. And it's much easier to work with this stuff. Instead of a flat table and not a lot of things. Just really quickly with the mouse. What's about APL?
Well, when people would go through the lessons, all these pages are generated, so I don't think that could have been written in just ASP.NET. This information is then stored in an APL component file. It's then picked up the other side. It also logs the whole time who's on the system, what they're doing, and keeps records. Because the way our company is set up, a learner will come to us and wanting to go on the course. We would then go and find local council money or government money or any of the other sort of bodies to fund it. Then every so often they will want to come in and see a full record of what that learner has done to make sure that we're doing our job properly and make sure that learner's going through. So everything the learner does is logged in the system as well. That's one point. Also, they will upload work onto the system, and that's then downloaded the other side by the assessor, marked, graded, and put back on the system. I mean, yes, this could have been written in Visual Basic. The only reason for doing it in APL was speed, pure speed. Speed of development, that is. So, for example, this learner has uploaded work on the system here. That means that they've uploaded some work. That means that the assessor has seen the work and put a comment in, and then that is the score. If they achieve a 4, it means that they're compliant in that particular field. And all of this has to be managed by something, and the files will have to be kept somewhere. I suppose you could argue it could be in a SQL Server setup, but for speed of development, why want you to use component files in APL? Does that answer your question? Well, the story that I told last year is how we got to this in the first place. Basically, we developed this and got a package in to do a lot of this sort of stuff. And we developed the lessons for using a Visual Basic system in a previous company. And then, for reasons I can't go into in great detail while being recorded because of lawyers, the company or the work was taken away from us suddenly. And a group of us found ourselves unemployed. We were very angry, and they all got together and sat on the table, these assessors and people to do with education and me. And they said, well, we have to get back, we have to develop something and get back into the marketplace to take these guys on. And I said, well, the only way we can do it is if you give me APL. And them never having heard of APL before, not really knowing the difference between JavaScript and a bunch of grapes, they said, yeah. And so I went off and I developed it, and we got back into the marketplace within 2 months. And now I can see the benefit of APL, because as more and more requests come in for different things, I can start building on other stuff. Now there's a whole talk about a database, there's talk about detailed information about the time spent on the system, statistical information. It all falls out far easier than if I'd written the whole thing in, say, Visual Basic or C# or set up some SQL Server database. Sorry?
That sounds great.
But that's why, to be honest, the only person in the room that knew what APL was me. I just said it, and they said, yeah.
What you actually studied was it was an ISP.
Yeah.
And it looks like all the interface in APL is not as strong as
I would agree. And that's why I used the ASP note. We use all the power of the ASP note with the colours and the spinning icons and the tables, and because we're dealing with nursery teachers and young people, some of them just out of school, who want to see something big and colourful and pretty. So we have little orange men holding question marks and various things, and lots of video and loadable documents. But it's all designed to be big and colourful and pretty. Any other questions? Or am I going to be the first guy that finishes on time properly? I don't know.